Hello there, and welcome. It's so lovely to have you here with me tonight. You've found your way to a little corner of calm, a place where we can set the world aside for a while and just breathe. I'm your host, and I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend this time with me. Now, before we get to our story, let's just take a moment to settle in, shall we? Wherever you are, whether you're tucked up in bed, curled on the sofa, or just finding a quiet moment in a busy day, let this be your permission to simply stop. Let go of the doing. Just be. Find that position that feels most comfortable for you. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. Maybe give your neck a little roll side to side. There we go. And now, let's bring our attention to the breath. Nothing forced. Nothing complicated. Just breathing in and breathing out. Perhaps you might let the exhale be just a little longer than the inhale. A natural, easy rhythm. In and out. In and out. I've always found that the simplest things are often the most profound. And the breath, well, it's always there, isn't it? A faithful companion. When the mind starts to race, when worry tries to knock on the door, we can always come back to this. The slow, steady tide of the breath. In and out. Now, I'm going to tell you a story tonight. It's a tale that's been told in many ways over many years, but this one is a little different. It's a story for an autumn evening, for those nights when the air turns crisp and the light gets softer, and there's a feeling of magic just at the edge of things. It's about a young woman, a mysterious house, and the strange and unexpected ways that hearts can open. So, let's begin. There was once, in a small village nestled in a valley, a man named Auguste. He was a merchant by trade, a man who had built a life on the promise of ships and cargo, on spices and silks that travelled across distant seas. He had a kind face, though worry had begun to carve lines into it, and he was a widower, a fact that had left him both the sole parent to his 6 children and a man carrying a quiet grief that never fully left him. His 6 children were a mixed bunch. The 3 eldest, 2 sons and a daughter, had inherited their mother's beauty and their father's stubborn pride, but little of his warmth. They had grown accustomed to fine things, velvet and silk, sweet wines, and the sort of life where servants appeared when you clapped your hands. The next 2, another son and daughter, were much the same, trailing after their older siblings, learning to want what they wanted. But the youngest, a girl named Elara, was different. She had her father's eyes, warm, watchful, a little sad, and a nature that was steady as an oak. She didn't chase after finery. She found her pleasures in simpler things. The smell of bread baking, the feel of soil between her fingers, the quiet company of the old woman who kept the village garden. When the ships were lost, all 3 of them, swallowed by a storm that came out of nowhere, the family's fortune crumbled like dry earth. The fine house was sold. The carriages were taken. The servants departed one by one, leaving only silence and dust behind. The older children raged against this new life. They complained about the cramped cottage they'd moved to, about the lack of hot water, about the indignity of having to dress themselves. They acted as though the world had wronged them personally. But Ilara simply rolled up her sleeves. She went to the baker's wife and learned how to knead dough until it was smooth and springy. She went to the old gardener and learned which herbs grew best by the kitchen door. She learned to mend, to sew, to stretch a small bit of coin into a meal that could feed 7. She did it all without complaint. And somewhere along the way, the cottage began to feel like a home again. There was always a fire in the hearth, always a loaf of bread cooling on the windowsill. The neighbours, who had kept their distance from the proud merchant and his demanding children, began to warm to Ilara. They saw her quiet determination, her willingness to learn, her gentle way of asking for help. She became, without meaning to, the heart of that little household. Her father noticed. Of course he noticed. He would watch her sometimes, his youngest, moving through the kitchen with a calm competence that belied her years, and his heart would ache with a complicated mix of pride and guilt. He had given his other children everything, and they had learned to want. He had given Ilara little, and she had learned to be enough. 2 years passed in this way. The family had settled into a rhythm, uneasy for some, peaceful for Ilara. And then, one grey afternoon, a message arrived. A ship. One of the lost ships. It had limped into a port far to the south, its cargo miraculously intact. The news spread through the village like wildfire, and by the time it reached the cottage, the older children were already celebrating. They talked of moving back to the city, of new dresses, of reclaiming their rightful place in the world. Auguste stood in the doorway, the letter trembling in his hand, and for a moment, hope flickered in his tired eyes. Ilara watched her father. She saw the hope, yes, but she also saw the weight. The journey would be long, several days on horseback. The negotiations would be difficult, and there was always the chance that this miracle would slip through their fingers like water. But she said nothing. She simply began to pack his saddlebags. The night before he left, Auguste gathered his children in the small kitchen. The fire was low, casting long shadows on the walls. He told them he would travel to the port city to claim what was theirs. And then, in a gesture that felt like an echo of better times, he asked each of them what gift they would like him to bring back. The eldest daughter, Celeste, spoke first. "A gown of velvet," she said, her eyes shining. "The color of midnight, with silver thread at the sleeves." Her brother, Mark, was next. "A new hunting dagger," he said, "with a hilt of polished bone." The others followed in turn. A silk scarf, a leather-bound journal, a pair of riding gloves. Each request was more extravagant than the last. Then Auguste turned to Ilara, who had been quiet by the window, watching the last light fade from the sky. "And you, little one, what shall I bring for you?" Ilara was silent for a long moment. The room seemed to hold its breath. "Father," she said finally, her voice soft, "I have heard the old gardener speak of them. Roses. He said they grow in the south, in gardens that smell like heaven. I have never seen one." She looked at her hands, a little embarrassed. "If it's not too much trouble, if you could bring me a single rose, any color at all, I would like to know what it looks like, what it smells like." Auguste smiled. A genuine smile, the first in a long while. "A rose," he said, "for my practical girl who asks for nothing. I will bring you the finest rose in all the city." The other children exchanged glances, a mixture of amusement and dismissal. A rose, when they had asked for velvet and silk. But Alara didn't notice. She was already imagining it. A soft, blushing bloom. The kind of thing that seemed too beautiful to be real. The next morning, she stood at the garden gate as her father mounted his horse. The autumn air was crisp, and the leaves along the forest path were just beginning to turn. She packed his bags with bread and cheese, with a flask of water, and a warm scarf she had knitted herself. He leaned down from his saddle and kissed her forehead. "I won't be long," he said. Alara watched him ride down the path until the trees swallowed him whole. She had a strange feeling in her chest. Not quite worry, not quite fear. Something in between. She told herself it was nothing. After all, their luck was finally turning. She stood there for a long time, her hand on the gate, before she finally turned and walked back inside. Auguste made good time on the first day. The road wound through the forest, then opened onto farmland, then dipped into valleys where streams ran clear and cold. He passed villages where children played in the streets and old men sat on benches, watching the world go by. He felt, for the first time in years, a sense of possibility. By the second day, he had reached the coast. The air changed. Salt and seaweed, the cry of gulls, the distant crash of waves. The port city sprawled before him, a tangle of narrow streets and tall buildings, of warehouses and docks and ships with their sails furled. He found the harbour master, then the customs house, then a lawyer who dealt in maritime claims. Each step felt like progress. His ship had indeed returned. The cargo, spices, silks, fine wines, was waiting to be claimed. But there was a problem. Several problems, in fact. Word had spread. News travelled faster than any horse, and by the time Auguste arrived, his creditors had already gathered. They had filed claims, produced documents, called in debts that had been accumulating for 2 years. One by one, the cargo was seized. The spices were taken. The silks were distributed. The wines were sold at auction. Auguste spent 3 days running from office to office, from lawyer to judge, trying to reclaim what was his. He argued. He pleaded. He offered to pay what he could. But it was no use. The law was clear, and the debts were real. On the evening of the 3rd day, he sat on a bench by the docks, watching the sun sink into the sea. He had nothing. The debts were paid, yes, but there was nothing left. No fortune to rebuild, no cargo to sell, no money for the gifts he had promised his children. He thought of Alara, waiting for her rose. He thought of Celeste, dreaming of her velvet gown. He thought of them all, and his heart was a stone in his chest. He should have stayed the night, rested, made a plan. But grief and pride are strange companions, and they drove him to do something foolish. He mounted his horse, still tired from the journey, and rode out of the city as the last light faded from the sky. He was perhaps 2 hours outside the city when the storm struck. It came without warning. A wall of wind and rain that seemed to rise up from the very earth. The sky, which had been clear, turned black as ink. Lightning split the darkness, and thunder rolled across the hills like boulders falling down a mountainside. Auguste's horse, a steady mare named Clover, was not easily frightened. But this storm was something else. The wind tore branches from the trees. The rain came in sheets, so thick he could barely see. When a crack of lightning struck close enough to singe the air, Clover reared and bolted. She plunged into the forest, off the main road, crashing through undergrowth and leaping over fallen logs. Auguste clung to her mane, his knuckles white, his heart pounding. He lost his hat. He lost his sense of direction. He lost all hope of finding his way back. How long they stumbled through the darkness, he could not say. It might have been an hour. It might have been 3. The rain did not relent, and the wind howled like a living thing. And then, through the chaos of the storm, he saw it. A wall. A high stone wall, rising up from the forest floor. And beyond it, barely visible through the sheets of rain, a light. He urged Clover forward, toward an iron gate that stood slightly ajar. It groaned as he pushed it open, a sound swallowed by the wind. The path beyond was paved with old stone, half covered in moss. Trees lined the way, their branches meeting overhead, like the arches of a cathedral. At the end of the path, a house. It was vast, a chateau that seemed to have grown out of the earth itself. Its walls were pale stone, darkened by rain. Its windows were tall and narrow, a few of them glowing with a soft golden light. The roof sloped steeply, punctuated by chimneys that rose like sentinels. Auguste dismounted with trembling legs. He found shelter for Clover in a covered alcove, a stable of sorts, and made sure she had water and a bit of hay from a pile stacked in the corner. Then, steadying himself, he approached the front door. It was massive, oak, bound in iron, with a knocker shaped like a lion's head. He lifted it and let it fall. The sound echoed through the house like a drum. And then, silence. He waited. He knocked again. Nothing. The storm pressed against him, wind and rain driving into his back. He had no choice. He pushed against the door with all his weight, and slowly, it swung open. He stepped inside. The silent house. The entry hall was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow. A chandelier, thick with dust, hung overhead, though it gave no light. The only illumination came from a faint glow beneath a set of double doors at the far end of the hall. Auguste stood in the doorway, dripping water onto the cold flagstones. The silence inside was profound, not the silence of an empty house. There was something watchful about it, something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. He called out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" His voice echoed, swallowed by the darkness. He took a step forward, then another. The double doors at the end of the hall seemed to pull him forward, their warm glow a promise of shelter from the storm. He pushed them open. The room beyond was a library, or perhaps a sitting room. It was hard to tell. Bookshelves lined the walls, crammed with volumes that looked ancient and well-loved. A fire roared in a massive hearth, casting dancing shadows across the floor. And before the fire, a table was set. A single place setting. A loaf of bread, still warm by the look of it. A bowl of soup, steam rising from its surface. A carafe of wine and a glass. Auguste stood in the doorway, his conscience warring with his exhaustion. He should wait. He should find the owner, explain himself. But the fire was warm, and the bread smelled like heaven, and he had not eaten since morning. He sat down. He told himself he would only stay a moment, just until the storm passed. He would leave a note, explain his intrusion, offer payment when he could. But the soup was good, and the bread was soft, and the wine went to his head after the long, cold ride. The fire crackled, the storm raged outside, and Auguste, warm for the first time in hours, leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He did not mean to fall asleep, but sleep came for him anyway, gentle and deep, and he dreamed of nothing at all. The morning after, he woke to sunlight. It filtered through tall windows, pale and gold, casting long rectangles of light across the floor. The fire had burned down to embers, glowing red in the hearth. The plates and glasses from the night before were still on the table, though someone, or something, had cleared away the remains of the meal. Auguste sat up, stiff and disoriented. His memory of the night before came back in pieces. The storm, the gate, the silent house. He had eaten a stranger's food. He had slept in a stranger's chair. And now, in the light of day, his embarrassment was acute. He rose quickly, straightened his waistcoat, and made for the door. He would leave. He would slip out before anyone saw him. He would forget this whole humiliating episode and focus on getting home to his children. The entry hall was different in the daylight. Grand, yes, but also neglected. Dust lay thick on the chandelier. The carpet on the twin staircases was worn in places, the threads loose. Suits of armor stood at attention along the walls, their visors raised as if watching him pass. He murmured as quietly as he could, his footsteps echoing despite his efforts. The front door was heavy, but he managed to pull it open. Fresh air rushed in, damp and cool, carrying the scent of wet earth and something else, something sweet. He found Clover in the alcove, rested and calm. He fed her the last apple from his saddlebag, then led her down the path toward the gate. That was when he saw the garden. It had been hidden by the storm the night before. But now, in the morning light, it spread out on either side of the path. A wilderness of overgrown hedges and tangled vines, of statues half hidden by climbing roses. And there, at the center of it all, a pergola. It was a charming thing. Old stone covered in moss, with roses climbing up its columns and spilling over its roof. And beneath it, in the middle of a round seating area, a rose bush. It was the most beautiful thing Auguste had ever seen. The blooms were pink, the color of a sunrise, clustered so thickly they seemed to glow. Each petal was perfect, velvet soft, heavy with dew. The scent drifted toward him sweet and rich, and suddenly he was thinking of Alara. He had promised her a rose. He had come home with nothing, no fortune, no gifts, no hope to offer. But he could give her this. He tethered Clover and approached the bush, pulling a small knife from his saddlebag. One rose, he told himself. One rose would be enough. But the blooms were so beautiful. One became 2, then 3, then a handful. He would take them all, he decided. They would be his gift to her. Proof that even in the wreckage of his journey, he had kept his promise. He was so absorbed in his task that he did not hear the footsteps, did not sense the presence that had emerged from the house and was now standing behind him. He did not hear anything at all until a voice, low, rough, like stones grinding together, spoke from just behind his shoulder. You have taken something that does not belong to you. Auguste spun around and found himself face to face with a creature from a nightmare. He was tall, unnaturally tall, with a build that suggested immense strength. His face was half hidden by a thicket of dark hair, a beard here that seemed to grow wild, and beneath it, his eyes burned with a ferocity that stopped Auguste's heart. He wore a simple linen shirt, wrinkled, and breeches that had seen better days, as though he had risen in haste. In one massive hand, he held a staff. In the other, nothing. And yet he seemed to hold all the power in the world. Auguste stood frozen, the stolen roses clutched to his chest. The scent of them, so sweet a moment before, now seemed cloying, almost sickly. He began, his voice a croak. I thought there was no one. I was lost in the storm. You ate my food, the creature said. His voice was not loud, but it filled the space between them, pressing against Auguste like a physical weight. You slept in my house. I would have let that pass. I might have let it pass. He stepped closer, and Auguste stepped back, his heel catching on the edge of the pergola's stone floor. But these roses, you have stripped my bush, every bloom. Do you know what those roses meant to me? Auguste shook his head, unable to speak. The creature's eyes, fierce as they were, flickered with something else for just a moment, something that might have been pain. They were hers, the one who planted them, the one who loved them. She is gone, and these roses are all that remain of her, and you have taken them. I'm sorry, Auguste whispered. I didn't know. I only wanted my daughter. She asked for a rose. I had nothing else to give her. Your daughter. The creature's voice was flat. You stole from me for your daughter. He was quiet for a long moment, and in that silence, Auguste could hear his own heart pounding, the distant call of a bird in the forest, the soft rustle of wind through the overgrown garden. You owe me a debt, the creature said finally. I do not need your money. I do not need your goods. I need something else. Auguste waited, dread pooling in his stomach. You will stay here, the creature said. For 1 year. You will work. You will serve. And at the end of that year, if you have proven yourself, you may go. But my children, Auguste began. Your children, the creature repeated. He looked at the roses in Auguste's hands, then back at his face. You said you have a daughter, the one who asked for the roses. Yes, Auguste said. Elara. She is my youngest. Then perhaps she will take your place. The words hung in the air, heavy and terrible. What do you mean? Auguste asked, though he already knew. The creature's eyes were unreadable. Someone must pay the debt. Either you stay, or you send another in your place. Someone who came to you freely. Someone who chose to come. He stepped back, giving Auguste room to breathe. You have 1 week. Return to your family. Make your arrangements. If you do not return, I will find you. And if you send no one to take your place, I will take you anyway. He turned without waiting for an answer and strode back toward the chateau. His figure grew smaller against the pale stone walls, and then he was gone, swallowed by the great front door. Auguste stood in the garden for a long time, the roses wilting in his hands. The morning light, which had seemed so gentle, now felt cold. The birds sang on, indifferent to his sorrow. He had nothing. He had come for his fortune and found only ruin. He had promised his children gifts and brought them only trouble. And now he had bound himself, and perhaps his daughter, to a creature that was not quite a man, in a house that was not quite a home. He tied the roses to his saddlebag, mounted Clover, and began the long ride home. The journey back was slower than the journey out. Auguste had no urgency now, no hope to propel him forward. He rode through villages and valleys, past farms and fields, and all of it seemed drained of colour. The autumn leaves, which had seemed so beautiful on the way to the coast, now looked like embers of a fire that had burned out. He arrived at the cottage late in the evening. The lights were on in the kitchen. Elara always left a lamp burning when someone was away, and smoke curled from the chimney. It was the picture of warmth, of home, and the sight of it broke his heart. His children heard the horse and came running. Celeste was first, her face alight with expectation. Mark followed, then the others. Only Elara hung back, watching from the doorway, her expression soft with concern. "Father, you're back!" Celeste reached for his saddlebags, her hands already searching for the velvet gown she had been promised. "Did you bring them? Did you get everything?" Auguste dismounted slowly. His legs were stiff, his back aching. He loosened Clover's girth and led her toward the small stable before he spoke. "I brought what I could," he said. He reached into the saddlebag and pulled out the roses. They were wilted now, their petals bruised from the journey, but they still held a trace of their former beauty. He handed one to each of his children. The older ones stared at the flowers in disbelief. "Roses!" Celeste's voice was sharp. "You brought us roses. Where are our gifts? Where is the fortune?" Auguste did not answer. He walked past them into the kitchen, where Elara had set out bread and cheese, a pot of tea steaming on the table. She took the rose he offered her, the best of them, the one he had saved for last, and held it to her nose. "It's beautiful, Father," she said softly. "Thank you." Her siblings were not so gracious. They crowded into the kitchen, demanding explanations, their voices rising with each question. Auguste sat at the head of the table, his hands folded before him, and waited for them to quiet. When at last they fell silent, he told them everything. He told them about the ship, about the creditors, about the fortune that had slipped through his fingers. He told them about the storm, the chateau, the meal he had eaten without permission. He told them about the roses, the creature, the debt that now hung over them like a sword. When he finished, the kitchen was very quiet. "You can't go back," Mark said finally. "You can't leave us here alone." "Someone must go," Auguste said. "I promised." "And he is not the sort of creature one makes promises to lightly." "But you said—" Celeste's voice was thin, frightened. "You said he would take someone in your place. Someone who came freely. That doesn't have to be you." "It could be." She stopped. They all looked at one another, each waiting for someone else to speak. It was Alara who broke the silence. "I'll go." Her voice was calm, steady. It cut through the tension in the room like a blade. "No," Auguste said at once. "Absolutely not. I will not allow it." "Father." Alara moved to his side, taking his hands in hers. "Listen to me. You are needed here. You must rebuild what we have lost. The business, the connections. Only you can do that. The family cannot survive without you." She looked at her siblings who were watching her with a mixture of relief and shame. "I, on the other hand, can be spared. I have no husband, no children. I have learned to keep a house, to cook, to tend a garden. Whatever work this creature requires of me, I can do it." "Alara," Auguste's voice broke. "I am not afraid," she said. Though her eyes were bright with tears she refused to shed. "You told me he let you eat. He let you sleep. He could have hurt you. And he did not. Perhaps he is not as terrible as he seems." She squeezed his hands. "And besides, I asked for the rose. If I had not asked, you would not have taken them. This debt is mine as much as yours." Her father wept. He held her for a long time, his shoulders shaking, and she held him back, steady as a rock. Her siblings said nothing. They had nothing to say. That night, Alara packed a small bag, a change of clothes, a comb, a book she had read a dozen times, and her rose, pressed between the pages, its petals already fading. The next morning, she stood at the garden gate, the same gate where she had watched her father leave just days before. The autumn air was crisp, the leaves turning gold and red. She wore her plainest dress, her sturdiest boots, and a cloak her mother had made years ago, worn thin at the elbows. Her father embraced her one last time. "I will come for you," he whispered. "I will find a way." She smiled and kissed his cheek. "I know you will. Now go. Take care of them. They need you." She mounted Clover. Her father had insisted she take the horse, and set off down the forest path. She did not look back. She was afraid that if she did, she would lose her courage. The road through the forest was quiet. The trees arched overhead, their branches bare in places, still heavy with leaves in others. Sunlight filtered through in patches, dappling the ground with gold. It was beautiful in a melancholy way, and Alara found herself thinking of all the things she might never see again. She had never travelled far from home. The village was her world, the cottage, the garden, the familiar faces of neighbours. She had dreamed of roses, yes, but she had never imagined that one rose would bring her here, to this strange and silent road. She rode for most of the day. The sun was beginning its descent when she found the gate. It was just as her father had described it. Tall iron, rusted in places, set into a high stone wall. It stood open, as though waiting for her. She took a deep breath and urged Clover through. The path beyond was lined with ancient trees. Their branches met overhead, forming a tunnel that seemed to go on forever. The air grew cooler, damper. The sound of birds faded, replaced by a stillness that pressed against her ears. And then, the chateau. It rose out of the twilight, like a creature waking from a long sleep. Pale stone, dark windows, a roof punctuated by chimneys that seemed to pierce the sky. It was beautiful, in a stark and forbidding way. It was also, unmistakably, a prison. Alara dismounted. She found the stable where her father had sheltered Clover and made the horse comfortable. Then, with her small bag in hand, she walked to the front door. She did not knock. She did not wait. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The entry hall was vast and shadowed. Suits of armor stood along the walls, their visors raised, their gauntlets resting on the hilts of swords. A grand staircase curved up on either side, its carpet worn thin. Dust motes floated in the fading light. "Hello." Alara's voice was steady, though her heart was racing. "I am Alara. I have come to take my father's place." Silence. The house seemed to hold its breath. And then, a voice. Low, rough. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You came freely." Alara lifted her chin. "I did." Another pause. Then, from the shadows at the top of the stairs, a figure emerged. He was large, larger than her father had described. Or perhaps her father had not found the words to capture it. He moved with a strange grace, heavy and deliberate. His face was hidden beneath a wild beard, but his eyes were bright, burning with something that might have been anger, or might have been something else entirely. He descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. When he reached the bottom, he stood before her, close enough that she could see the texture of his skin, the way his hands hung at his sides, half clenched. "You are not afraid," he said. It was not a question. "I am afraid," Alara admitted. "But I am here." He looked at her for a long moment. Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the double doors at the end of the hall. He pushed them open and gestured for her to follow. Inside, a fire was burning. A table was set, this time for two. Steam rose from a pot of soup, and fresh bread sat on a wooden board, still warm. "You will eat," he said. It was not an invitation. Alara sat. She did not know what else to do. She watched as he took the seat across from her, his massive frame somehow fitting into the chair, though it creaked under his weight. They ate in silence. The soup was good, better than anything she had made herself, though she would not have admitted it. The bread was soft, the butter fresh. When she looked up, she found him watching her. "You are not what I expected," he said. "What did you expect?" she asked. He did not answer. He rose from the table, his chair scraping against the floor, and walked to the window. The last light of day was fading, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "You may stay in the east wing," he said without turning. "Any room you like. The house will provide what you need." He paused. "There is one condition." Elara waited. "Do not enter the west wing." She frowned. "Why?" He turned to look at her, and for the first time, she saw something in his expression that was not anger. It was weariness. A deep, bone-tired weariness that seemed to go back years. "Because I have asked it," he said. "That is all." He left them, disappearing into the shadows of the house. Elara sat alone in the library, the fire crackling, the scent of bread still lingering in the air. She looked at the closed door where he had vanished, and wondered what kind of creature made demands like that, and what kind of secret he was hiding behind it. She finished her meal in silence, then rose and made her way toward the east wing. The house was quiet, but it did not feel empty. It felt, she thought, like something that was waiting. Something that had been waiting for a very long time. She chose a small room at the end of the corridor, with a window that faced the garden. The bed was made, the sheets fresh, a pitcher of water, and a basin waiting on the dresser. She did not know who had prepared it. She did not ask. She lay down, pulling the blankets up to her chin, and listened to the silence of the house. Outside, the wind stirred the trees. Inside, something creaked. A floorboard, perhaps, or the house settling into the night. She thought of her father. She thought of her siblings, already forgetting her, already planning their return to a life of comfort. She thought of the rose, pressed between the pages of her book, already fading. And then she thought of him, the creature in the linen shirt, with his burning eyes and his terrible secret. He had asked her not to enter the West Wing. He had said please, in his way. A creature of power, asking instead of demanding. She closed her eyes. She did not know what the days ahead would bring. She did not know if she would ever leave this place. But as sleep began to pull her under, she found that she was not afraid. She was curious. The days at the chateau fell into a rhythm. Elara woke early, before the sun was fully up, and made her way to the kitchen. The house seemed to provide for her. There was always flour in the pantry, eggs in the larder, milk that appeared as if from nowhere. She learned to cook in this strange kitchen, to fill the halls with the smell of bread and herbs, the way she had done in her father's cottage. The creature, she had not learned his name, kept to himself. He appeared at meals, sitting across from her in the library, eating in silence. Sometimes he asked her questions, brief and abrupt. Did she sleep well? Was the room to her liking? Did she need anything? She answered honestly. The room was fine. She needed nothing. She slept well enough, though the silence of the house took getting used to. He did not eat much. She noticed that. He pushed food around his plate, took small bites, watched her with those burning eyes. She thought perhaps he was lonely. She thought perhaps he had been lonely for a very long time. One evening, as the autumn gave way to winter and the first snow began to fall, she found him in the library. He was sitting by the fire, a book open in his lap, though he did not seem to be reading it. His face was turned toward the window, watching the snow drift against the glass. "You could read aloud," she said from the doorway. He looked up, startled. For a moment his expression was almost human, surprised, uncertain. Then the mask slid back into place. "I do not read aloud," he said. "Why not?" He did not answer. But the next evening, when she came to the library, he was there again. And this time, when she sat down, he began to read. His voice was rough, but it softened as he read. He chose a book of poetry, verses about the sea and the sky, about love and loss. He read for an hour, perhaps more, and when he finished, he closed the book and sat in silence. "That was beautiful," Elara said. He did not look at her. "It was hers," he said. "The one who planted the roses. She loved this book." And then, without another word, he rose and left. Elara sat by the fire for a long time after he was gone. She thought about the roses, stripped from the bush by her father's hand. She thought about the woman who had planted them, who had loved them, who was gone now. She thought about the creature who guarded them, who had let her father eat and sleep, who had demanded only a debt paid. She thought about the West Wing, forbidden, and wondered what secrets it held. She did not go there. She had promised, after all, and she was not the sort of person who broke promises. But the thought lingered, a whisper at the edge of her mind, growing louder with each passing day. Winter deepened. The snow piled against the windows, and the days grew short and cold. Elara learned the rhythms of the chateau, the way the light fell in each room, the way the floors creaked, the way the house seemed to breathe around her. She explored the east wing, the kitchens, the gardens buried under snow. She did not go west. The creature, she began to think of him as her host, though that word felt too small, changed as the weeks passed. He was still abrupt, still strange, but there was a softness to him now that had not been there before. He asked her questions about her life, about her father, about the village where she had grown up. He listened to her answers, truly listened, in a way that no one had ever listened to her before. And she found herself asking questions too. Not about the West Wing, she kept that promise, but about other things. About the books in the library, the paintings on the walls, the gardens that lay sleeping under the snow. He answered some questions. Others he deflected, his face closing off, his voice turning flat. There was a wall between them, she realized, something he would not let her see. But there was something else too, something that was beginning to grow, slow and tentative, like a seedling pushing through frozen ground. One evening, as the winter solstice approached, he gave her a gift. It was a small box, wrapped in ribbon, left on her pillow. She opened it to find a rose, not a fresh one, but a dried one, pressed between glass, preserved forever in the moment of its bloom. There were others, he said that night at dinner. On the bush. Some were saved. That one is for you. She looked at him across the table, at his rough face and his burning eyes, and she felt something shift in her chest. Something that was not fear, not curiosity, but something else entirely. "Thank you," she said. He nodded once, then looked away. But she saw it, in the moment before he turned, the flicker of something human in his expression, something that might have been hoped, then breaking of the promise. The winter passed. The snow melted, and the gardens began to wake. Elara spent her days outside now, clearing the overgrown paths, coaxing new growth from the tangled earth. She planted herbs by the kitchen door. She pruned the roses that had survived, the ones the creature had saved. She had been at the chateau for nearly a year, and still she had not entered the west wing. The promise had been easy to keep at first. The west wing was forbidden, and she was not a curious person, or so she told herself. But as the days lengthened and the spring came, she found herself thinking about it more and more. What was he hiding? What secret was he keeping behind that closed door? She told herself it was not her business. She told herself she had no right to know. She told herself that a promise was a promise, and she was not the kind of person who broke her word. But one evening, when he was late to dinner, unusual for he was always punctual, she found herself walking toward the west wing without quite knowing how she had gotten there. The corridor was dark. The doors were closed. Heavy oak, bound in iron. She stood before them, her hand raised, her heart pounding in her chest. She should turn back. She should go to the library, wait for him, pretend she had never come this way. Instead, she pushed the door open. The room beyond was a bedchamber, vast and shadowed. The curtains were drawn, the air thick with dust. And there, in the center of the room, on a table covered in silk, lay a portrait. A woman, young, beautiful, with eyes that seemed to look right through her. She was wearing a gown of pale pink, and in her hand, she held a rose. Elara stepped closer, her breath caught in her throat. The woman's face was familiar, not because she knew her, but because she had seen her expression before. In the creature's eyes, when he looked at the roses, in his voice, when he read the poetry she had loved. This was her, the one who planted the garden, the one who was gone. And then, behind her, a voice. "I told you not to come here." Elara spun around. He was standing in the doorway, his massive frame filling it, his face unreadable in the darkness. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean... You promised." His voice was low, and there was something in it that she had not heard before. Not anger. Something worse. Disappointment. "I know," she said. "I'm sorry." He did not speak. He stood there for a long moment, and then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Elara stood alone in the dark room, the portrait watching her with its painted eyes. She had broken her promise. She had let her curiosity get the better of her, and now she was not sure she could fix what she had done. He did not come to dinner that night. He did not come the next morning, or the next. The house, which had begun to feel like a home, fell silent again. The fire in the library burned low. The bread she baked sat untouched on the table. Elara searched for him. She called his name, the name she still did not know, through the empty halls, the silent rooms. She went to the gardens, to the stable, to the chapel hidden at the back of the chateau. He was nowhere. On the third day, she found him. He was in the garden, sitting on the stone bench beneath the pergola. The roses were blooming again, the new growth she had coaxed from the tangled earth, and he was sitting among them, his head bowed, his hands resting on his knees. She approached slowly, afraid he would disappear again, but he did not move. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should not have broken my promise." He did not look at her. "It does not matter." "It does matter." She sat on the bench beside him, close enough to feel the warmth of him, not so close that he would be uncomfortable. "I wanted to understand. I wanted to know who you were, who she was." He was silent for a long time. The sun moved across the sky, the shadows shifting around them. And then, slowly, he began to speak. "She was my wife," he said. "Her name was Rose. The story of Rose." He told her everything. He had not always been this way. Once, he had been a man, handsome, or so he had been told, with a fortune and a title, and a future laid out before him. He had married for love, against his family's wishes, and for a time, he had been happy. But Rose fell ill. There was no cure, no medicine that could save her. She withered away over the course of a year, and he watched her go, powerless to stop it. On the night she died, he made a bargain. He did not say with whom, only that he had been desperate, that he had been willing to give anything to save her, and he had given something, himself. The bargain had not saved her. She died anyway, and he was left like this, not dead, not alive, something in between, a creature of shadow and stone, trapped in a body that was no longer his own. "The roses," he said, "were hers. She planted them the spring before she fell ill. She loved them. And when I could not save her, I tended them. They were all I had left." He looked at Elara then, and for the first time, she saw him clearly. Not the creature, not the beast, just a man, broken by grief, bound by a promise he could not keep. "You are not a monster," she said. He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You have not seen what I am." "I see you," she said, "sitting in your wife's garden, tending her roses, reading her poetry, keeping her memory alive. That is not the work of a monster. That is the work of someone who loved." He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. Not anger, not grief, something softer, something that might have been recognition. "I broke my promise," she said. "I am sorry. But I am not sorry I came here. I am not sorry I know." He was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. His fingers were rough, calloused, but his touch was gentle. "Stay," he said. It was not a command. It was a question. Elara looked at the garden around them, at the roses blooming in the fading light. She thought of her father, her siblings, the life she had left behind. She thought of the months she had spent in this strange house, learning its rhythms, learning him. "Yes," she said, "I'll stay." She did not know then that she had broken something else that night, something older than the promise she had made, something that had been waiting, perhaps, since the moment she first walked through the gate. She did not know that the bargain the creature had made, the terrible, desperate bargain, had a condition, that the curse that held him in this form could only be broken by one thing, not a promise kept, but a promise offered freely. Not a debt paid, but a gift given. She did not know any of this, not yet. She only knew that she wanted to stay, that the house, for all its shadows, had become a home, that the creature, for all his roughness, had become someone she could not imagine living without. And so, when he asked her to stay, she said yes, freely, without reservation, without fear. And in that moment, something shifted. She felt it before she saw it. A trembling in the air, a change in the light. And then, before her eyes, he began to change. The roughness smoothed. The shadows fell away. The creature who had sat beside her, his hand in hers, became a man. He was older than she had expected, with lines on his face and grey in his hair, but his eyes were the same, bright, burning, filled with something that might have been wonder. "You broke it," he said, his voice no longer rough, no longer the growl of a beast. "The bargain. You broke it." "I didn't do anything," she said. "You stayed," he said. "You chose to stay, freely. That was all it ever needed." He looked at his hands, turning them over, as though seeing them for the first time. He touched his face, his hair, and then he looked at her, and she saw the tears in his eyes. "I have been here for so long," he said. "I thought I had given up hope. I thought no one would ever." He did not finish. He did not need to. Elara took his hands, the same hands that had tended roses and read poetry, the same hands that had held hers in the garden, and she smiled. "Tell me your name," she said. "Your real name." He smiled back, a hesitant, uncertain smile, the smile of a man who had not smiled in a very long time. "Julian," he said. "My name is Julian." And in the garden where Rose had planted her roses, in the fading light of a spring evening, Julian and Elara sat together. The weight of the curse lifted, the promise of something new beginning. They did not leave the chateau right away. There was work to be done, the gardens to tend, the house to air, the memories to sort through. Julian had been alone for so long that he had forgotten what it was like to share a life. Elara, who had spent her life taking care of others, had to learn to take care of herself. But they learned together. They planted new roses in the garden, beside the ones that Rose had loved. They filled the library with new books, new stories. They opened the windows and let the light in. And one day, a year and a day after Elara had first walked through the gate, a knock came at the door. It was Auguste. He had come, as he had promised, to bring his daughter home. He stood in the entry hall, The same hall where Julian had first appeared to him, and he looked at his daughter, healthy, happy, standing beside a man he did not recognize. "Father," Elara said, taking his hands, "I want you to meet someone." She told him everything. The bargain, the curse, the promise broken and remade. She told him about the garden, the poetry, the long winter nights when she had learned to see past the surface of things. Auguste listened, and when she was finished, he looked at Julian, at the man who had once been a beast, and he understood. "I brought you something," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small, dried flower, a rose, its petals faded to brown, its stem brittle with age. "It was the one you gave me, the one I kept." Elara took it, her eyes filling with tears. "You kept it?" "I kept it," he said. "I kept it to, and now, dear listener, our story is done. The fire has burned down. The garden is quiet. And somewhere, in a chateau that may or may not exist, a man and a woman are sitting together, watching the stars come out, content in the knowledge that some bargains are worth keeping and some promises are worth breaking. Let the story settle over you like a warm blanket. Let the rhythm of my voice carry you gently towards sleep. There is nothing you need to do now, nothing you need to remember. Just breathe, in and out, in and out. The night is soft, the bed is warm, and you are safe here, in this quiet moment between waking and dreaming. Good night.